All right, everybody. It is a full spoiler review of The Last of Us. I said I was going to do it, so I'm going to do it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to do a full-on spoiler review of the HBO Max, the original HBO show, which is based off the popular video game. I did an immediate reaction to it last night. If you're just finding this channel, you're brand new to it, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 70,000. We're going to do a live tour. We're going to do stand-up comedy. We're going to do live podcasts. But in order to do so, we need you to come on out and see it. So subscribe to the channel so you can learn more about us, that you want to go. Okay. So tons to be said, man. Tons to be said. This is a really, really good show. I mentioned this in my immediate reaction, so if you didn't see that, I'm going to reiterate that. I was not I didn't play the game. I can't say I wasn't a fan. I never played it. I'm sure I would be a fan. It's been sitting on my shelf, and I mean to play it. But I haven't played it yet. But I decided to wait to play it because of the hype around the show and to see, and for people that had seen it, that were fans of the game, they had already said, there was like early screenings of it, and people had said, look, this is a pretty true iteration to the video game. And even the stuff that they added layers to it. And there was a lot of rave reviews about how they did that. My biggest concern, not with this show, but, excuse me, my biggest problem, I should say, with video game adaptations in the past, whether it's Max Payne, even the last Uncharted that just came out, or Halo, for some reason, producers of these video games or producers of these shows and movies, and they decide that, well, people have seen the game already, and they know the story already, so we're going to change it up and make it completely different. Halo was completely changed. Uncharted was, for the most part, completely changed. And they don't treat it the same way, and I reference this all the time. When you look at like Harry Potter or Game of Thrones with the Red Wedding, people read those books. People understood what was happening as they were going into it, and they wanted to see it brought to life. So everything I've heard thus far with this show, that's what they're doing. And I know they added some stuff. What I did do, and again, this is spoilers, so if you didn't know that already, you're going to get spoiled, so you've been warned. What I did do after and I think this is something I might do after each episode, is that I went back and I watched the story mode of the game, of the opening scene leading up to the, not yet, but I'm going to lead up to the part that I know already. I don't want to get spoiled for anything. But to see like what they left out, what they added, and what I saw in at least the first scene was that they added a lot of detail to the relationship of Joel and his daughter. Both performances absolutely incredible. I thought it was incredible. Nico Parker, who is Tandy Newton's daughter, plays Sarah, his daughter, Joel's daughter. And what they did so well in the opening scene of the game, it's really sweet. They're sitting on the couch. She gives him the watch, does all that, and it sets up a nice dynamic that he carries her to bed. And as a dad, you're just in the game alone. You get that connection. What I thought they did well in the show is they added a little bit more detail to it. They didn't add anything that took away. They added stuff that added to the emotional relationship. They actually showed her go to show how much like the watch meant, to show all the personality that she was, that she would go and she would take money from him, but not too much, just enough to pay for the watch. She's in school. The first thing she's thinking about is her dad and how she's got to get to the city. And then she goes, and she's also the one that's kind of taken us through this whole thing. Like the understanding, because you always feel it in the beginning, even if you don't know what's going on, you know what the premise is. And I should say, before I even get into all this, the opening of the show actually wasn't even any of that. The opening of the show I thought was something that's not in the game that they added, that was the two scientists or doctors talking about in the 1960s, late 60s, about what could happen. And the one guy's talking about what has happened in the real world inside of a global pandemic and what's realistic. And then here's this other guy who's talking about fungus and talking about, yeah, you look, when it comes to LSD and the way it takes over your brain, and with hot weather, eventually there is a possibility, it's possible that fungus could take over, and that's it. And it's this eerie setup, really eerie setup. Same dude from The Mummy and Sliding Doors, and he's brilliant in the setup to it, because it's like, that's what it is. They're telling you what this thing is. It's not that this kind of guess of what caused the outbreak And I'm not shitting on any other shows or movies in the genre that have done it before. They've done it really, really well. But I like that if you're gonna do it, you do it different. And someone pointed this out, I think, really smart in the comments. I maybe mentioned zombies, and he said it's not zombies. They never call it zombies in the game. They never call it. Just say it's an infection. Absolutely understand, warranted, and thank you for that tidbit, because it's true. They don't ever say zombies. And it's not necessarily zombies. It's they make it a matter of fact to tell you in the beginning of this show. It's this fungus that is infecting people to take over their bodies and control their brains. And I thought that was so great to go, okay, well, we know what it is. We know what it's going to be. So when it starts to happen, you're like, oh, okay, in 2003, when this shit starts going down, and you know right away once his daughter is walking out, and you see, and they're setting up how different she's going to be from Ellie down the line, and again, I had no idea that she was gonna die, or at least then, right? Because you'd assume it. And this is something that I also say about like Tess, who is set up later on. I can't imagine she lasts very long because of the marketing of the show and the marketing of the video game. The marketing of it all, it's always Joel and Ellie, and everything I've ever seen from people who have raved about this game, I've only seen Joel and Ellie marketed all the time. Nowhere is Tess. Nowhere. So maybe she ain't gonna last too long, but I don't know. And if you know, you know. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. You're gonna find out with me. Either way, this is the setup, and the other setup inside of that, this little conversation that Joel and his daughter have in the beginning and preface, also sets up his brother Tommy, which is going to be even more relevant as we get into the present day. But all that setup, and it's a good half an hour at the beginning of showing it. They didn't spend too much time, because I watched this with my wife, who, if you're brand new to my show or my channel, my wife has a very particular taste. There's certain things that she will watch, and she'll bail on things quick. And this is not normally something that she would be into or seek out. But she wanted to watch it with me last night. She knew I was going to watch it and do a review and all this stuff. She's like, let me check it out. Maybe I dig it. And I said, like, I heard great things about it. She likes character development. And she was locked in. She was in it. And she even wants to continue on. She's like, normally this isn't my stuff. But what she liked about it, and the point that she made, was that in certain genres of the zombie genre, which, again, post-apocalyptic genre, they make it a matter of fact to do the gore and to do the whether it's Walking Dead and the zombies are ripping people's faces off, or they kind of made it. You get how devastating and scary it is in this, but you don't see a lot of that, at least yet, right? Like I know that in the trailers you see the big fungi monster faces and stuff, and that's fine. But what I'm talking about is, even when the old lady was, and it's a pretty gruesome scene when we discover that shit's going down, and that Sarah walks in and says and sees the old lady chomping on her friend, the cookie lady, and it's like you see it, you see the gnawing, but it's like you don't have to have, the more the fungus is coming out of her mouth, but you don't see like flesh isn't coming out and all that, and a lot of times it's fun, but they didn't need it for this, and it gets graphic and it gets brutal, and there's the violence and stuff, but that's. I don't know. And again, I'm not taking it away from other shows that do that. I just think that the idea that they don't have to rely on it for this, it differentiates it and says, okay, this is what this show is and what it's going to be. We're going to rely on the characters. We're going to rely on the story. And then inside of that whole scene, when they're trying to get out of town and showing what Joel can do, and they also show, that he's a veteran, and they do that really good, that he's a combat veteran. He fought in the war. And there's that, and it's just a bumper sticker. That's all I gotta let you know. The writing is really well done in the show. It's just to let you know, okay, so he can do some shit, and he's got to do some shit, and he's protective of his daughter. And when the old lady comes in, and she's chasing after Sarah, and Joel comes back with his brother, and that whole scene, even the setup of getting the watch, and that feeling of, oh, this is like a true love, and then the brother's like, something's going down, dude. Something's going down. You got to come get me. I'm in jail. Come get me. And he leaves, and there was another reason. I guess there's again another reason why he was gone. And so when Sarah's left alone, she wakes up at 2 a.m, and the helicopters are all over the place, and she comes out, and the dog's there, and the dog's like, "Fuck this. get me out of here. And she's like, come back to your house. Like, I ain't going back there. And the dog dips. Like, that was I loved that. The dog's like, I got a better shot out there than going back with that old lady. Because even when the old lady was turning, that was one of the, kind of what I'm talking about, where you didn't have to do a close up of her and see her just in the background, like out of focus, and she's like twitching and moving, and you're like, oh, that's brutal, and it was effective. So when she finally, it's going to happen. So when it finally goes down, and here comes Joel, and he comes back, and she comes running out of the house, and he takes her out, and she's like, you killed him, you killed her. He's like, yeah, I kind of had to at that point, and then running people over. And another thing that they did that was really great, so subtle. A neighbor sees this shit going down. It's like, Joel, what's going on? He goes, get back in your house. Get out of here, lock the doors. And then he just takes over, runs over the other guy who's infected. And the neighbor goes, Joe, what are you doing? And if you look in the background, he goes to help the guy, and the guy jumps on him and eats him. And it's like, oh, and as they go into town, the planes crashing. It was very kind of War of the Worlds-ish, reminded me of. And you think they're going to get out. You think, Joel tells Tommy, keep going, man, pass by the people. He's focused on protecting his family. And that sets it up as little things like that. Just protect the family. Let's get the fuck out of here. And once it all goes down and that plane crashes and they crash, then that's when it all goes to hell. When, and it also sets up the early stages. And you guys will tell me in the comments. I don't know it yet, but who ultimately the government is, right? Because that's like the early stages of the government. He's on the phone. And he's like, hey, I got these 2 civilians here, and they're just like, take them out. We can't take any chances. And Joel's like, we're not sick. He's like, I'm sorry. And he fires the weapon, and they roll down the hill, and you're like, okay, it looks like they're all right. And then he's about to kill him. Tommy comes in, and then the second Tommy goes, you just knew it. You knew Sarah was in trouble. And this scene, what an absolutely fantastic job from both PEdro Pascal and Nico Parker of this just fear of, like, he's a vet. He knows it. He sees the wound. I mean, I've seen enough of these war movies now, and things like they always do this when they show that particular wound. When somebody gets hit there, it's the same face that they all make, rightfully so, of like, oh yeah, this is not good. This is not good. And she can't even stick with it that long. And he's trying to pick her up, and he's like, I know it hurts. I know. And it was my wife and I, who are parents, that was a tough scene for us to watch. It was a really hard one for us to watch. Like, my wife was pretty broken up on that one. But then it ties into now, present day. And the setup there, man, right away, showing what Boston is now, showing what the world is, showing like the post-apocalyptic, more about how humans have now evolved, not evolved, but have survived into these little pockets, and what the governments are, and there's a rebellion going on, and all of that. And it's the way that that's set up with this little kid walking in, and I was confused at first, because as they're talking to him, and then they see it turn red, I'm like, doesn't that mean he's infected? And then they give him the fucking injection, and next thing you know, to the transition, once again, good writing, is that here's Joel years later, and they aged up PEdro Pascal perfectly. They didn't have to put any prosthetics on him. They just dyed his hair gray, put some gray in him, made him a little withered, and I believe that he went from 38 to or 36 or whatever to 56, like that. I believed it. Didn't go, oh, he doesn't look any different. That drives me nuts sometimes when you're like, oh, he looks exactly the same as he did. They did a good job with aging him up, and just without deep fake or any of that stuff. I thought it was done really, really well. But yeah, so when that kid is taken out, and Joel's the one who's got to, and you see that Joel is kind of hardened now, and he's taking these jobs, and he's done this stuff before, and he's got to take this kid, and he's got to throw his body in the thing, and then just find out what else you got for me. Taking these jobs, he's dealing drugs to the cops, and then even to set that up of what's this guy been up to? What's he been up to? And then I love that when you see it a little bit more, as they set up, just gradually throughout the episode, these little things like lost in the darkness, look to the light. That's the sign of the rebellion. And then we get that, and now here's Tess, who's also set up, and it's so funny, because I thought that, I thought that Tess was, what's her name? Shoot, Amy Kuhn from The Leftovers. That's who I thought it was at first. That's what I thought it was, and because they look very, very similar. I believe that's her name. I hope that I didn't get it wrong. But either way, she's really, really good in this show, and that's and that's Anna Torv, who plays Tess, and she's set up to where she even mentions Joel without mentioning his name because the guy's like, "Don't send your muscle after me." She's like, "Well, let me out of here." Blow up thing happens. There's this war that shows you there's more of this war. They talk about this engine thing, and then also sets up how Joel is still. We know that Tom, because we start to ask that question: Where's Tommy? Where's his brother? Where is he? Well, we find that out. He's trying to find him outside of the walls. He's been working with the rebellion. He's been doing this stuff, and Joel's got to find him. So he's trying to find this engine. Turns out that Tess is saying, "Hey, look, we got this guy. Him and his buddies beat the shit out of me, but we can go. I promised him I wouldn't sick you on him. I lied. Let's go kick his ass. Let's go get the engine." And through all of that, that's when we set up Ellie. And Ellie is set up now. And what I didn't realize, and I guess I realized this after watching the thing and seeing some comments from you guys, the character of Marlene is the only actor in it that was the actual character, at least in this episode, from the game. She played Marlene in the game as well. And Marlene's the leader of this whole thing. She's the one who sets us up. We know that there's got to be something going on with Ellie, right? And we set up the complete difference of between Sarah and Ellie, because we know that Ellie's going to be matched up with Joel, but she's so radically different and kind of born into all of this and just hardened by all this. And there's something about her. She's like the chosen one. She's the one she has been infected, but is showing no signs of being sick whatsoever. So that's the setup of like, what do we do with this kid? Where do we? She's the most important thing, and Marlene's telling her people, listen to orders, don't shut your mouths, don't worry about what I'm doing. There's a reason behind it. Sets up a deal with the same asshole whose guys beat up Tess. There's a shootout, and even when Tess and Joel show up in that area, and you see like again like that, it could have just looked like a set piece, but it's like it didn't. It felt like, oh, this is this fungus, man. It's what it is. It's just taken over the world. It's like this evolution of between that and, without mentioning global warming, they kind of hinted at it with the world getting too hot and all that. And then you see what it's become and what it can do to a person. And then leading into that shootout, and then we get our setup for the entire series, and that's basically Marlene has been shot, and she says, "Look, Joel, here's the deal. You got to take this kid, and here's what you get in the deal to do so." So after a little bit of fighting and infighting and saying, "I don't want to do this, I'm not going to do this," Joel's a different guy than he was in 2003, so we think anyway. And he begrudgingly, but knowing that it's the best deal that he can take, he takes the kid. He hasn't warmed up to her yet. He's sleeping on the couch. You see, again, a perfect setup between the two of them, showing the relationship that I think we're going to get, the conversations that we're going to get from him, but also showing how clever this kid is and showing the idea of trying to figure out this code, and she eventually cracks it with the 80s music and all that. But the ending scene is the one that really I think is the most telling, where they said it in the after show too, and I kind of picked it up as I was watching it. They're getting out, and then you see the cop from earlier before, which set up, deliver at the end, where he's like, "I got it. I warned you, man. I said just stay home, and I got to take you out." And he tests Joel green. He tests Tess green. He's about to test Ellie, and she stabs him. And then he's like, "Get out of the way. I'm going to kill her." And then instincts kick back in. There's Joel. He beats this guy to death, kills him. And there's this, and they mention this in the after thing. There's Ellie, and she's just looking at him, where Sarah was a little horrified when he killed the woman in the beginning. She kind of digs it and likes the fact that he's protecting her, and it's like this kind of smirk behind it. But then we also find out, or at least they find out, that she tests positive for this thing. She's like, "I've been infected for weeks and nothing is shown. That's why you're taking me where you're taking me." And I like that there wasn't this whole thing of them going, "Wait, really? Let's have a conversation." Like, well, it makes sense. Why do we have this kid? There's a reason why we have this kid. This is probably why. Let's get the fuck out of here and figure it later. And then they take off and they leave. And then there's the 80s music that plays in the back. So all of that combined, just put together as an hour and a half. And I think a lot of these, and this is another thing that I think is done really well. It's that one of my biggest concerns when they make movies, well, it's definitely movies from video games, is you take like the gameplay and all this stuff that tells the story of Last of Us. I think it's like 10 hours or something like that. When the full gameplay and into the story, it's a matter of like 10 hours. That's, if you wanted to, 10 episodes of an hour show, or you know, and when you're adding stuff, a little more, or really long 8 episodes. And that, to me, if you do it the right way, add some stuff, you know, touch up your story a little bit, stay true to it. I don't understand why they haven't done that with streaming. I don't understand why they didn't do that with Uncharted. Uncharted should have absolutely been a series. I think they're doing it with God of War. Halo, they completely dropped the ball with. They just, we're going to do a completely different story. You have a series. Do the series. Do the thing that people loved. And that's what Last of Us seems to be doing. Again, I'm going to leave that to you guys, the people who have played the game. But what I've saw so far with the gameplay thus far, and even like some of the shots that were like, even when they were, and this is something I'm going to ask people who have played the game. Please comment and let me know if this is true, false, or I'm making it up. When they're going into the actual city in the very beginning, when shit's going down with his brother and his daughter, the shots of them in the car seemed very, and it works cinematically for sure, but it seemed very video game-ish. It seemed like this is the shot that when you're playing the game, you're going to see people coming at you. You're going to see the plane coming down and crashing. It seemed like very reminiscent of something that I'd seen in a video game. Now, I'm going to go back and watch it, and I'll learn that answer to myself. But I liked how, if that is the case, they're able to combine that and do that. And I hope that with the success of this, that people take a page out of this and show. And I'm a big Knights of the Republic fan. If you've been following me long enough, you know that. If not, let me tell you. And I think that this is hope for me, that if they take if you can see what Knights of the Republic could possibly be, it's something like this in the course of 10, 12, 2 seasons. This is what The Last of Us could do for the video game genre. It has enough time to breathe. It is not condensed into 2 hours. They would have made this movie into 2 hours, it would have been ruined, because what could you have fit? I mean, the opening scene alone the beginning was like to the apocalypse was 40 minutes, and that's they never would have done that. It would have been a 5 to 7 minute scene in a movie. So I'm so curious to get everybody's thoughts. What do you think? What do you like about the show so far? What do you dislike about the show so far? Is it true to the video game? The stuff that they added, do you like it? Do you not like it? I'm so curious. And if you liked my spoiler review and you want to see more of it, please let me know that you want to see more of it, because I am approaching this from someone who hasn't played the game. I saw that there's a lot of people, by the way, that are similar to me and are going into it this way. So let me represent you if I can. Anyway. So I'm very excited for the show. I'm glad to have a new show that I'm really I'm going to be digging, and I can watch with my wife so far. We'll see how long she sticks around with it. But anyway, hit that subscribe button, will you? Let's get us to 70,000. We're trying, and I'm putting together a playlist, by the way, for all of the. I'm going to do a Last of Us plays. I'll have all the immediate reactions. It'll have all that, and you can check that out. So if you check the if you want to come and say, oh, where's the Last of Us stuff, you go to the playlist. It will be there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the flip side. It's The Last of Us. Peace out.